Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing my top 10 worst movies of 2018. Now I'm sure a lot of you would do the same as me and avoid movies that look really bad. I'm not a professional movie critic, so I don't have to see every single big movie that comes out in the cinema. So movies like I Feel Pretty or 50 Shades Freed, I don't have to see those movies, I don't have to review those movies. So I've avoided movies like that throughout 2018. So my top 10 worst of 2018 might look slightly different to all the big reviewers out there who have got movies like The Nutcracker, 50 Shades and stuff like that. I don't have those kind of movies on the list. I've just got movies that I've seen and I don't think were good. And at number 10 is Solo. I thought this movie was actually okay. I loved the action sequences in it. Some of the acting in it was pretty good. But I think what my biggest issue with this movie was it was a little bit too similar to Harrison Ford's story of Han Solo when he turned up in A New Hope episode 4. It was just like a younger version of that plot, and it just kind of fell flat in its face at the end of the day. Even though Alden Ehrenreich, is that his name, that played Han Solo, even though he was acceptable as a young Han Solo, I always thought to myself, even when I was watching the movie, what could have been if it was Anthony Gruber that played Han Solo.
190 years old? You look great. Push it!
And then number 9 is Venom. Everything about this movie was a complete mess. The only redeeming factor in this film was Tom Hardy. I know there is a fan base for Venom out there. Some people really liked it, some people were really surprised by it. For me, I was very, very disappointed in Venom. Luckily, it made over $800 million at the worldwide box office, so that means there's probably going to be a sequel, and I'm hoping that if they do a sequel, they can redeem themselves from what they've done in this movie.
Oh, I have a parasite. Yeah. Name is Chen.
Number 8 is Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. This movie's production started in 2012, and I think they started the filming process in 2015, but with doing that and with the Jungle Book from 2016 coming out, they kind of shelved the movie for a little while. There are some big actresses and actors that do the voices for this film, but I think that when I watched it, it was mostly an English cast, and with all the accents, I didn't really quite get into the accents of all the characters because they changed all of them, or most of them, to an English accent. It was kind of off-putting. Also, the CGI in this film looked unfinished. It was eventually picked up by Netflix and brought out probably the best time of the year when most people are watching family movies, but for me, it wasn't a good story of Mowgli, and I think that the Jon Favreau version was always going to outshine it.
I think we can both agree, Mowgli, that you are something the jungle has never seen before.
And then number 7 is Pacific Rim Uprising. I wasn't a massive fan of the 2013 Pacific Rim, so going into this movie, I didn't have any expectations whatsoever. And it turns out I was right. It was a bigger mess with a very thin plot and terrible acting. It's one of those movies where the movie acts like it's good, but it's not. And then number 6 is The Nun. This was the most frustrating movie of 2018 for me. I'm a huge fan of the Conjuring franchise. In fact, I even liked the first Annabelle movie. Valak was great in The Conjuring 2, and I couldn't wait for a Valak or The Nun standalone movie. She was hardly in it, and the movie relied on jump scares. And it felt like the movie's only purpose was to serve as a connection to the first Conjuring movie, and the connection wasn't even that good. It was a very, very lazy movie. Number 5 is The Meg. Similar to Pacific Rim Uprising, this is another movie that acts like it's a great movie, and it's really not a good movie at all. This is what a sci-fi channel movie would look like if it had a big budget. The acting was awful and the story was even worse. My biggest issue was the lack of blood and victims in this film, especially with a shark the size of a Meg. And I can understand why they've done it, because they wanted a PG-13 movie, but that was the wrong way to go. If this movie was rated R, it might have been better.
If you want me to go instead, I will.
I got this, mate.
Okay, good. So I was lying.
And then number 4 is Game Over Man. The trailer for this film had me excited. I'm a big Adam Devine fan. He's one of those comedy actors that's just naturally funny, especially with the facial expressions that he has. And Putting him into a Die Hard style comedy movie, I thought this is going to be great. It was full of terrible cringeworthy jokes and it had the improv acting that I really hate in a comedy. Overall, it felt like they tried to make a bad movie and they succeeded.
I'm not a loser!
Guys, stop! You just shot at me?
I shot near you.
And at number 3 is Mile 22. This was a forgettable film. In fact, it was so forgettable, I actually forgot what it was about. I remember leaving the cinema thinking, what did I just watch? If it wasn't for the stylistic and the realistic action sequences, this could have been my number 1 worst movie of 2018. It was a major miss for Mark Wahlberg.
Pray. You feeling calm, Alice?
Not even a little. Are you?
I'm totally calm.
And at number 2 is the Cloverfield Paradox. This was very similar to The Nun in the fact that it relied too much on the connection for the other movies in its franchise, and it relied on the reveal too much. If you move the Cloverfield aspect to the side, this movie just felt like a cheap knockoff to the movie Life from 2017 with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal. If this movie didn't try and be a part of the Cloverfield franchise, and if you hadn't seen Life from last year, then you might have thought this was a decent movie, but it just felt like it was a knockoff of Life and it tried too much to be a Cloverfield movie when it wasn't. And at number 1 is The Commuter. Some of you are probably thinking, what is this movie? This is probably the first big budget movie that came out in 2018. It came out in January 2018 and it's one of those Liam Neeson action movies. I tend to find that the Liam Neeson action movies over the last 10 years, they're not great movies, but they're fun to watch, they're fun action movies, but The Commuter wasn't one of those. It had a story with more holes than a golf course and the twist at the end was pretty awful, and in fact it didn't make any sense. It tried to be an interesting thinking person's movie, but it was just awful. Even Liam Neeson wasn't a likeable character in this film. When you watch the Liam Neeson action movies, even if they are bad, you're thinking, right, we're rooting for Liam Neeson, but in this one you don't root for him, and I don't think it's because he's a bad character in it, I think it's just a bad movie.
What do you want from me?
It's just one little thing.
So that's my picks for the top 10 worst movies of 2018. Like I said, that list is probably a lot different from everybody else's lists, but it's because I haven't seen that many bad movies. As I said before, I tend to avoid movies that look really bad and that turn out to be bad, so those movies haven't made it onto the list. So what do you think of my top 10 list, guys? Is your list similar? Have you seen any of the movies on this list and you like them? I know there's going to be a lot of love for Venom and maybe a lot of hate for this video because Venom's on it, but I'd like to know your comments. Tell me why you love Venom and any other movie that's on the list. Leave your comments down below. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching again. Thanks for subscribing and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.